Hi, I'm Robin Rothenberg, author of Restoring Prana, a therapeutic guide to pranayama and healing through the breath. Welcome to Restore Your Prana. In this course, you'll be confronted with some ideas, some concepts, some science that perhaps you may not have been aware of, whether you're a yoga practitioner, a teacher, therapist, or other healthcare practitioner. And some of these ideas might feel a little controversial, provocative, contrary to what you've been taught and what you've known to be true. I encourage you to have a notebook and pen handy so that you can take some notes as we go along, and just write down reflections or thoughts you have, certainly questions that arise. Some of these may be addressed later on in the course. Some of them may be addressed in my book. But I encourage you to just track like where your starting point is, what your understanding is, and allow your skepticism to come through, the felt sense that this could not possibly sit right with what you have known about breathing or been taught about breathing. Bring that all into this exploration. I think that going with your own experience and understanding will help you to understand a little bit more of what I have encountered, which is that there's a big gap between what we're being taught about the breath mainstream, whether it's yoga mainstream or even healthcare mainstream, and the actual facts about what makes breathing functional versus dysfunctional, healthy versus potentially unhealthy for our well-being. So enjoy, restore your prana. And so we can change one or both, right? One or either or both to change minute volume. But the intention with all of them is to change minute volume. Okay? So with regard to the myth of the more we breathe, the healthier we are, I'd like you to take a look at this. So normal average respiratory rate, and I'm going to make a little distinction between the average, what's accepted as average versus optimal. On average, healthy people breathe between 12 to 15 breaths per minute. I would say healthier people breathe 8 to 12 breaths per minute. That's more optimal, which is fewer breaths per minute than all these other people with these other conditions. And breathe about 5 liters per minute, okay? So when we look at asthmatics and people with heart disease and people with sleep apnea, people with anxiety or chronic pain, chronic inflammation, people who talk all the time, like teachers or salespeople, receptionists, all of these people breathe more, right? They breathe more than the normal average healthy amount that we see with people who do not have these kinds of chronic conditions. So if you want to take on the myth of breathing more is healthier, all you have to do is look at this chart. It's that people who have some kind of health condition actually breathe at a much higher rate and much higher volume than people who are healthy. Just a little bit of description of something I've referred to a few times, that there's this functional type of breathing and dysfunctional type of breathing. What does that mean? And when I hear yoga teachers talk about, like, oh, just leave the breath as it naturally is, it's all good. Well, it's good if it's good. If it's functional, it's good. If it's not functional, it's a problem. So first and foremost, again, breathing through the nose when we're resting or when we're doing light activity, or eventually breathing through the nose even during exercise. I do all my exercise breathing through my nose. It was a retraining process, a conditioning process that took time, but breathing through the nose is always going to be the healthier choice. Abdominal diaphragmatic, getting people out of chest breathing and into that nice abdominal diaphragmatic action. And I'll go into a lot of detail about this. Just to say, the diaphragm is always activated with every breath. So there is no breathing without the diaphragm. But there is a healthy movement of the diaphragm and healthy support of the diaphragm with accessory muscles. And the accessory muscles of the chest are best left to heavy load or big exertion, and not intended to be recruited when we're at rest or doing, light load activities around in our life. Review a little bit. Respiratory Physiology 101. The primary function of breathing is to oxygenate the cells of the body. What we want is that, real wonderful cellular respiration happening. Oxygen is picked up by the red blood cells, delivered through the arteries, and there's sufficient CO2, so there's this diffusion of oxygen into the cells, and the CO2 is being released, and we're breathing out just the right amount, and everybody's happy and balanced. And this requires the proper balance between oxygen and CO2. So remembering that healthy breathing, it's not just a muscular process, it's principally a chemical process. It's about good, healthy exchange of the gases, first in the lungs and then in the tissues. Breathing harder, why that doesn't increase oxygenation and in fact does the opposite, is because of this. There's only so much oxygen in the air around us. And I'm talking about it in terms of sea level, not up in the high mountains of the Alps or the Himalayas, okay? And I'm not talking about Shanghai or New Delhi or a city where there's a lot of air pollution, just good quality air. Good quality air. I live in the Seattle area at sea level. 21% of the air I'm taking in with this breath, only 21% is oxygen. Most of it is nitrogen. 78% of what we take in and 78% of what we breathe out is nitrogen. Okay? So most of what I'm taking in is nitrogen, and only a small portion of it is oxygen. Furthermore, what I'm breathing out when I exhale, 16% of that is also oxygen. I take in 21%, breathe out 16%. I'm not great at math, but I can figure that out. It means what I actually need in my body, only 5% oxygen. I don't need that much. Okay.